Good morning, everyone. I'm going to start by reading the preamble for the City Planning Commission virtual meeting. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law, under COVID-19 emergency declaration, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting have the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you use the raise hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raise hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking on the raise hand icon again and mute your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen as displayed below. Next slide, please. All meeting activity is being recorded. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube and TV24 Public View. We have provided a link to the meeting for those who wish to speak on a particular case via our website and email. We have also received emails from those who have provided written comment on a particular matter. Mr. Chairman, that's the preamble. I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you. Michael, will you call the roll, please?
Bowen.
Present.
Downing.
Present.
Fluker.
Present.
Curry.
Present.
Hall.
Present.
Slife. Present. Have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The first on the agenda is the lot split permanent parcel number 016-13117. Project's located at 3209 West 46th Street. And Maurice, who do we have to speak to this?
We have Jorge Ramirez. Can you please use the raised hand feature so we can identify you? Mr. Ramirez? Mr. Ramirez, are you there? User, two call-in users. Is there a Mr. Ramirez present? Mr. Bowen, he does not seem to be present at the time.
Okay, so let's just hold that for the end of the meeting and see if he comes on. And Maurice, would you be able to see that when he shows up?
I will, unless he's a call-in user, then it's only identified as call-in user with a number.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just want to remind you, you'll have to have a motion to remove this from the table before you can hear it.
So
Thank you. Oh, he's not here. Let's hold off on the lot consolidation lot split. Let's go to the conditional use permit. Overlay district permit parcel number 002-34130 4700 Lorraine. Who's here to speak to this? Oh, it's Shannon, right? Shannon, are you on the?
Leonard?
I am here. Good morning. I'm Leonard.
Good morning.
Good morning. Just waiting for the slides. This is a pedestrian retail overlay case. This is for 4700 Lorraine, which is also the CMS A building. As you can see on the screen, this is the current location of the building on the corner of West 47th and Lorraine. In the rear, The rear parcel to the north, there's actually homes on those lots now. Next slide, please. So basically, the proposal here is to establish use as an event space for parties, baby showers, bridal showers, workshops, fundraisers, etc. And as you know, a place of assembly in our code under the PRO is considered a institutional use, which requires a conditional use permit from you guys. Next slide, please. So basically, the criteria for the institutional use for you all to decide is whether the subject building and space was designed specifically for the type of use proposed. Denial of such application would result in long-term vacancy, subject as demonstrated by the applicant, or the proposed use is needed in the immediate area and other suitable locations are not available. This was only presented as a zoning review only to obtain the conditional use and the variances. They would need a variance for screening on the front if they weren't doing any type of elevation changes in terms of glazing, not screening, I apologize, as well as parking, and then the use as well as assembly is first permitted in general retail. Next slide, please. You can go back. So, yep, that's the end of that. So that's the applicant is here. They are Christina Christensen or Mr. Michael Nolan. And I think that they might want to make some comments for you to consider.
Christina, Kristen, I unmuted your microphone. I don't see Michael Nolan. Is he here?
He's actually sitting next to me.
Michael.
Hello, I'm here.
Mr. Bowen, we have two applicants that would like to speak on this issue.
Go ahead.
So we're opening up a wedding venue. It's primarily focused on weddings with less than 100 people, so very intimate weddings. I'm not exactly sure what we're supposed to say, but we have discussed, the major part is that we don't have a lot of parking in the back of our space. But we have been in communication with John Haggerty, who is the CEO of the Urban Community School directly across the street. And it does seem like he is willing to allow us to utilize his parking.
Thank you. You want to add anything else?
No, I guess I just wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't sure what we were actually doing in this meeting, but we just want to bring a nice venue to the neighborhood. Some of the neighbors actually stopped by and commented on how nice it looks in here now with, you know, all the plants and stuff in the window and how clean it is in the parking lot and all that. I don't think it would be anything disruptive at all. It'll be a good addition to the neighborhood, and everyone that I've spoken with at Ohio City Inc. and anyone involved seems to agree.
Okay, well, that's good. One of your neighbors actually Faye Harris sent a letter of support for you, and she lives at 1810 West 47th Street, and she's in support. And Maurice, just so you know, she her email to us also said it would be nice if we could find a nice format to submit documentation for too. So we probably need to look into that. So commission members, any questions?
Mr. Bowen, we have Matthew Moss, our staff planner. If you have any questions for him, he can answer them as well.
Okay, let's hear from Matt then. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Matt Moss, the neighborhood planner. I just want to say that in regards to the conditional use criteria, I think this use for this building is appropriate, and it's hard to find uses for or space for uses like this on Lorraine. And I think allowing this use and permitting this building to be renovated in this way allows us to better guide new construction that comes into the neighborhood to better fit the PRO in both form and use. So I would be supportive of this.
To the chairman, this is Lillian. I move approval.
And I second.
We have a motion and a second.
I'm
Further
sorry,
discussion?
yes, this is August Fluker. Had my hand raised, but I guess you missed it. My concern is there's a grade school across the street. My son attended Urban Community School, and you say wedding venue, which suggests to me alcohol, people hanging out. So my question is, when is this venue going to happen? Is it going to be during school hours, or what's going to go on there?
Actually, it's going to be mainly focused on Saturdays. So we wouldn't be infringing on anything that's already going on during the week in the neighborhood. We would be the receptions would be ending at around 11 o'clock. So we wouldn't even be going very late to be disturbing anyone in the neighborhood.
Well, I was specifically concerned about the school.
Well, we're operating on Saturdays, so we wouldn't be operating during school hours.
Thank you.
Mr. Bowen, we also have Director Collier has his hand raised. He would like to make a comment.
Director?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too, like August, have actually 2 children who attend Urban Community School. I think the reutilization of this building is a positive, and thank you for asking the previous question, and I appreciate your answer. My only question was with respect to any exterior alterations to the building, do you guys anticipate doing anything to the frontage of the building just to clean it up? Because I believe this was a former industrial building.
Unless we are instructed by the city, we don't plan on changing anything. We do like the history of the building, but if we are required or if there is something that you guys want us to do, we will gladly accommodate.
One thing I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, to the applicants is, given the fact that you're on a major corridor like Lorraine, maybe looking into some city programs that may be able to help with investment in the facade of the building, just to improve it somewhat. I think that'll help your business and it'll also add value to the corridor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mike.
Maurice, anyone else?
I have nobody else with raised hands at this point.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Michael, call the roll, please.
Morgan,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry, Hall,
Yes.
Slight.
Yes.
Congratulations. Good luck to you. Okay, mandatory referrals, ordinance number 292-2020, designating the Pilsner Brewing Company Bottle Works as a Cleveland Landmarks. Who do we have for this one, Maurice?
We have Anthony Bango from Detroit Shoreway Corporation.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, excellent. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tony Bango, and I'm a project manager at Detroit Shoreway. I want to thank you all for considering the nomination of this building as a Cleveland landmark. If we could go to the next slide. So the site in question here is 6605 Clark Avenue. It's located on the southwest corner of Clark and West 65th Street in the heart of the Stockyards neighborhood. The parcel itself actually used to consist of the entire southwest corner, but in the past few years, the owner sold that northeastern portion of the parcel to Family Dollar. For those of you, I'm sure many of you know, but the Stockyards neighborhood has a history that really revolves around manufacturing and industrial production. The Pilsner Brewing Company and the Bottling Works building are a pretty significant contributor to that history, and many of the buildings that are still there are vacant and abandoned, and the same is true with the Bottling Works building, which is currently about 2/3 vacant and mostly underutilized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the company and the building. I'm going to talk about the conditions of the building as it currently stands, and then talk a little bit about our plans for the building. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So this is the Bottling Works building from Clark Avenue. You can see there's still a lot of significant architectural detail that exists on the building, but there have been some significant changes, including historic windows being removed, an awning over the Clark Avenue entrance has been removed, and significant changes to the loading dock. You can move to the next slide. What I want to show here is how much this campus changed in a short period of time. So this is a Sanborn map of the company from 1898. You can see there's just a few small buildings just off of 65th. If we could move to the next slide. This is a Sanborn map from 1930 to 1940. You can see huge change. There are 4 extremely large buildings with a handful of smaller buildings that support them. The northwest corner of the parcel is the Bottling Works building. So really, this site in its heyday dominated the corner of Clark and West 65th Street. If we could move to the next slide. So the history of the company. Pilsner Brewing Company is mostly known for its flagship brand, POC, which actually no one really knows what that stands for, but most people believe it's Pilsner of Cleveland. But to me, what's most important about the site is that, you know, the Pilsner Brewing Company was a testament to the Bohemian population that lived in the Stockyard neighborhood, many of them moving from Eastern Europe to work here in Cleveland. The company itself was founded by Wenzel Medlin, who learned to brew in the Czech city of Pilsen. And at the time when he came here, Pilsners were not a very common beer. So he started brewing them and he founded the company. However, Medlin himself was a very bad business person, and he went bankrupt in 1894, and the leadership of the company was assumed by a gentleman of the Bohemian community named Václav Huml. And under Huml's leadership, they saw massive expansion from 6,000 barrels annually in 1894 to 26,000 barrels annually in 1898. In 1901, there was a massive campus expansion that had included a 5-story brew house, a boiler house, stables, and a pitch house. And by 1915, they had completed the construction of the Bottling Works building, which also housed their corporate offices. We could go to the next slide. So they completed the Bottling Works building for the grand total of $300,000. And it was designed by an architect out of Detroit named Gustav Mueller. The facility itself was capable of bottling 5,000 bottles per hour, but really the building was intended to showcase the company. So at the front of the building, there was an ornamental staircase that would either take you up to the corporate offices or take you down into the basement to what was a Rathskeller. And there they brought people from the community and politicians in and tried to wine and dine them. They would serve them dinner and entertain them with cabaret dances and show them moving pictures that the executives took while they were out on drives in the countryside. And they said of themselves, quote, "It was no doubt many prohibitionists were converted." Despite that, though, prohibition still came along and they had to shift their operations to near beer production. And they also made ginger ale and orange soda and a plethora of other goods. And they also started selling ice and coal to local homes. When Prohibition ended in 1933, this was really the first brewery in Cleveland to resume production, making 175,000 barrels annually. It was purchased in 1935 by City Ice and Fuel, and that was really the end of the Bohemian ownership of the company. We can move to the next slide. So production continued to increase up until the 1950s with 500,000 barrels annually. But like many other smaller breweries in the country, they were struggling to compete with other national brands. And they were purchased in 1963 by Duquesne, and their operations were moved to Pittsburgh. In 1972, they were purchased again by Schmidt and moved back to Cleveland, but this time on Quincy Avenue. And then they closed all brewing when Schmidt closed in 1986. Really, the site, though, the original Pilsner Brewing Company campus, has been underutilized since 1963. And since then, it was used for storage, warehousing, and various auto-related uses. And today, the only building that is left standing from the original campus is the Bottling Works building. The rest were all lost to fires over the years. We can move to the next slide. This is a picture of the southwest corner of Clark and West 56th Street from 1914. To the right, you can see the Bottling Works building, and to the left is the 5-story brew house. We could go to the next slide. this is what that intersection looks like today. The brew house is missing. There's a Family Dollar featured on the corner there, and the Bottling Works building, it's still there, but it lacks the grandeur that it once had. If we could move to the next slide. This is an aerial view of the current site. At the north side of the parcel is the Bottling Works building. The rest of the parcel is mostly vacant land used for storage of basically automobiles at this point. There is a steel Quonset hut at the rear of the property that is also used for storage. Move to the next slide. To the left here is a picture of the Bottling Works building when it was constructed. It has shuttered wooden windows and an overhang over the Clark Avenue entrance. And you can see the loading platform to the right side of the building. On the right here is the same viewpoint of the building today. And you can see many of the windows are gone. The overhang over Clark Avenue is gone, and there's been significant changes to the loading dock. Move to the next slide. On the left here is the loading dock. You can see it's significantly distressed. The concrete is broken and falling apart. The metal awning is rusted and decaying in some areas. On the right is the rear of the property. You can see all 238 historic windows have been significantly changed. Many of them have been completely removed and boxed in with much smaller windows. Move to the next slide. To the left here, this is actually a penthouse in the ceiling that was intended to let light in from the roof of the property. That's been boxed in and replaced with storage. On the right is actually the cold storage within the building, and they punched a hole through that into the Rathskeller, and the whole space is being used for automotive repair right now. We could move to the next slide. On the left here, we have the original cobblestone driveway, which is deteriorating. The center is a beer hoist that used to be used in a storefront by the loading dock that is still there, but it's not functional anymore. On the right, you can see a pretty massive hole in the roof that's leaking. The roof is not in the best of conditions, and there are many areas within the building that are currently leaking. We can move to the next slide. So the point of this is I wanted to show some of the intended grandeur of the property. At the top left corner, that is tile work for their flagship brand, Pilsner Cleveland. We intend to restore that. The center photo is a photo of the pillar within the Rathskeller, and you can just see the detail that was put into that. They were really trying to impress the people that they brought into the building. And to the right is the ornamental staircase that would take you up to the corporate offices or down into the Rathskeller. If we could move into the next slide. So a little bit about what we want to do with the property. We've signed an option agreement with the property owner to purchase this 1.2 acre portion of the property that includes the Bottling Works building. We could move to the next slide. It's our intention to use low-income housing tax credits and historic tax credits to really restore this building to its former glory. In this elevation here, you can see that we want to restore the awning over Clark Avenue, fix the masonry of the building as it was originally intended, restore the penthouse at the top of the property, restore the loading dock as an entrance into the property, and restore all 238 historic windows of the property, including those in the penthouse, which would, and then restore the atrium into the property. If we can move to the next slide. This is a site plan. It includes 39 parking spots for the 39 units, affordable housing units that will be in the building. What's important here is that we intend to restore the historic cobblestone driveway and keep that as it was originally designed. We can move to the next slide, please. So this is the basement of the building. What I wanted to show here is that the bottom left corner, we will be maintaining the historic elevator shaft and historic stairway that have been there. And then towards the front of the building, we'll also be restoring the Rathskeller and using that as a community room that will be accessible to the public. We could move to the next slide. So this is the first floor of the building. I wanted to point out at the center of this, you can see open to above. That'll be light coming from the penthouse and the atrium, which is really important to us, maintaining this building as it was originally intended. In the historic use of this building, this would have been the bottling floor, and the executives would have been able to look down from the second floor into the operations. We'll also be maintaining the historic cash vault that was at the front and using that area around the front to showcase the history of the property and we'll be restoring the ornamental staircase. So you'll come in off of Clark Avenue into the building and be greeted immediately by this ornamental staircase. If we could move to the next slide, please. So this is the second floor of the building. You can see in the center the balcony looking down onto the first floor. And then I also wanted to point out the 2 orange units here are 3-bedroom units. Those are where the historic corporate offices for the Pilsner Brewing Company were located. It's our intention to maintain them with the same aesthetic. So the corporate offices have a lot of exposed wood and burlap siding within the walls, and we intend to maintain those units so that they continue to look like the corporate offices of the Pilsner Brewing Company. So that's my presentation. If anyone has any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Commission members? Maurice, do we have any questions, or do we have any other presenters?
We have a commission member that would like to speak. Go ahead and unmute your microphone. Stami.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. No question, but just a comment that the building's beautiful, and I love the fact that there's efforts to restore a historical building in that area that is still remaining from that part of history of Cleveland. So I love it. So just impressed.
Thank you.
Mr. Fluker has his hand raised.
I move to approve as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second, and Charles was the second on that one, Michael. Call the roll, Michael.
Bowen,
Present, yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry, Paul,
Yes.
Slife.
Yes.
It passes. Anthony, congratulations. Great project.
Thank you so much.
We're going to move to administrative approvals. Everyone take a look, and then when you're ready, I take a motion, or if there's any questions.
Mr. Fluker has his hand raised.
I move to approve the administrative approvals as written.
I'll second it, Diane Downing.
We have a motion, second, further discussion.
I just have a question. August, is this the project you're involved in, though?
No.
Is that not the one, the low-rise building? Just wanted to check.
No. Low rise building, which one? I guess I'm not following.
Oh, the on Larchmere, the one that's getting renovated.
No. This is further down.
Further down.
Okay. Michael, call the roll, please.
Bowen,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry, Curry.
I said yes. Can you hear me? Yep.
You're on mute. You were muted. Okay. Paul
Yes.
and Slife.
Yes.
Okay, administrative is passed. We're going to go on to design review. The first one is Due North Townhomes, new construction seeking final approval, 2329 West 16th Place. Who do we have for this?
Mr. Chairman, we have Wesley Harper. Go ahead, Wesley.
Good morning, everyone.
Can you unmute your and show your videos? I got to swear you in.
I believe I'm unmuted.
His video,
Okay, I can see
his
you.
video is there.
Wesley, can you see me? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you shall answer under the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Proceed.
Okay. Again, thanks for having me. this is for final approval. I was in front of you guys, I believe in February, for schematic review, and I did get approval. So we went back to Near West design review and presented the project with a couple minor changes, and we received approval from them. So I'll just very quickly go through the presentation to reorient everyone. The site is just west of I-71/90 on the western side of Tremont, just north of Kenilworth, east of Scranton. Next slide, please. Here you can see the site on the aerial. West 16th Place is a small dead-end alley, which has a handful of worker cottages, and then at the western terminus of 16th is a 10-unit townhome project that's wrapping up right now that we also worked on. So the proposed project that we're doing is kind of an extension in terms of material selections and project type. If you could scroll to the next slide. So what we're proposing are 3 buildings, 5 of which would flank the northern portion of the site, which has commanding views of downtown, and then 3 units on the southern end. These are all served by a common drive for vehicular traffic, and that would lead to 2-car garages for each unit. And you can see the stamped concrete that's designated on the site plan. That was part of the Near West design review. They were looking for that, so we added that detail. Next slide, please. Landscape plan. Our setback along West 16th Place per the townhouse code, which this project meets in every instance, is 4 feet. So there's a little bit of a space there for a landscape buffer for that front facade. And then we have plantings kind of peppered along the garage access drive. So it's not just concrete dominated area back there. We wanted to get as much greenery into that space as possible. And then on the western end of the drive, you can see that there's a line of plantings as well. And that's basically sitting next to the retaining wall that supports the freeway to the east. Next, please. Here's the first image. This image has the window that Near West wanted us to investigate at the very top of the building. We do not want to use that, or we don't want to include that window in the massing of that facade. So that's the only change relative to what you saw in the previous presentation. Next, please. Yeah, so here's the version we'd like to stick with. This is the version that you approved schematically back in February. Next, please. Just kind of a different angle here showing the proximity to the view of downtown. Next, please. Here we're looking towards the southeast. Next, please. And then here's a shot down the vehicular drive. You can see that we've got plantings along the walk there, and you can see the stamped concrete leading to the entry, the pedestrian entries to each unit. Next. Here is the northern facade where we wanted to focus a lot of the glazing, since the view to the north is so impressive with the skyline kind of unfolding in front of you. Next. And then here's just a shot to see how close we are to the freeway. This is looking towards the west from, let's say, the back seat of somebody speeding south on the freeway there. Next. Here is a view that Near West was interested in taking a look at. So this is the view north on West 16th Place. And so we've strategically placed the windows on that southern portion of the 4-story portion of the front unit. And that kind of acts as a beacon in some ways in the evening. It's a lantern at the end of the street. And so it also kind of think, inserts itself on a less cloudy and foggy day into the skyline conversation further north. So yeah, we were happy with how this view turned out, and I think Near West was too. Next. This is just a bunch of interior renderings. We don't really need to spend any time on these. I think there's probably a material palette a little further in the next few pages, Maurice, we could go over. Yeah. So the cladding for the second and third floors of each unit would be vertically oriented corrugated metal. The first floor of all the units would be a nickel gap pine that would be painted basically to match the vertically oriented metal. We then have poured in place concrete for the foundation walls, black frame windows, and then plantings, of course, throughout the whole project. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions or comments.
Mr.
Thank you, Wesley. So what you're asking is you would like the approval with the exclusion of the horizontal window on the top of the west elevation, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Questions from commission members, please.
Mr. Chairman, we have Freddie Collier has his hand raised. Director Collier.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick question with respect to that window opening, I'm curious about how far does that window swing out when you open it? Is it the full span, like it becomes flush with the house, or is it only a certain distance that window project out?
The windows that are operable would extend probably, let's say if it's a 3-foot wide window, it extends probably 2'6" in its, if it was opened to its full capacity, I would say.
Okay, all right. So it doesn't come flush with the house at all. Okay.
Yeah, you can kind of see at the bottom left there, I've got the windows or the front window slightly open, and then along the northern facade, you can see those are open. That's probably as wide as they'd be able to open.
Okay. I just thought it would be interesting if you can get the full span, but that's fine.
Other questions or motions?
Diane Downing, I move approval.
How is your motion, with or without the window, the horizontal window on the, what is it, the east elevation?
The west.
West elevation.
I move approval without the window.
I second. This is Tommy.
Okay, we have a motion second. Further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Cohen,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Slife.
Yes.
Congratulations. We're looking forward to the groundbreaking on this one. Thanks, Wesley.
Thanks.
Next design review is Fulton Road Townhomes, new construction. This is at 2300 Fulton Road. Who do we have for this one, please?
We have Hannah Cohen from Canez.
Okay, can we see?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, we can. Great. Thanks, Hannah. Can you raise your right hand?
Sorry, we also have our architect Garrett Lapping from Sixmo on and Michael David from Canez as well. So probably all three of us need to be sworn in.
Okay, so can everyone raise their right hand? You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you shall answer under the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Well, carry on, Hannah.
Michael's going to kick us off with just a quick background on the project.
Morning, everybody. We were here before you back in March 6th. So since it's been such a long time, I wanted to give everybody just a little refresher.
Michael, let me interrupt you 1 second. I see on the bottom of this that it was tabled, so we're going to have to remove it from the table.
Okay.
Can I have a motion to remove from the table?
So moved.
Second.
August, motion to remove from the table. Can I have a second?
Second, Lillian.
Okay, all in favor? Call the roll, please.
All right, I'm ready. Brian.
Call the roll.
Bowen.
Yes.
Downing.
Yes.
Fluker. Yes. Curry.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Smythe.
Yes.
It is now removed from the table.
Thank you. Sorry, Michael.
That's all right. So we were here on March 6th for schematic design approval. We're back here today after it was tabled at that meeting. As Hannah mentioned, myself, Hannah, and Garrett from Sixmo are all here today. I wanted to refresh everybody on the project. If we could go to the next slide, please. This project is located on the southwest corner of the intersection of Bailey, just before the bridge that goes over the RTA line. In 1896, the property was developed with residential units, garages, stables, and a grocery store. By 19, southern half of the property were demolished and replaced with a coal yard. In 1935, a filling station, junkyard, auto wreckage, and salvage yard were all established on the property. Those were all in place until 2011. So it was operating as a junkyard until 2011, at which point it was, I don't know what happened to Fulton Junkyard, but it was vacated. The property has been vacant since that time. It is currently an overgrown lot. There are various debris on there, trash from where people have snuck into the property. There's some cinder blocks and other debris on the property. When we presented this project to both the neighborhood block clubs that encompass the area, it was a well-known eyesore to the community, which everyone seemed to be in full support of having some residential development on that site. To the west of the property is single-family home. To the north is Willett Cemetery, and to the east is Scrapcom. So there's a variety of uses in the area. We feel that our project meets various goals of the city's citywide planning goals, including creating a high-density mixed-use district that promotes travel, walking, provides diversity of housing choice. So we don't have final numbers on this project, but we anticipate them to be around the 300,000 mark, which, as you all know, we have a lot of we do a lot of work in the Ohio City area, and we've identified that there's a lack of new construction townhomes that meet this price point. So we offer a lot of variety of units in this project, some a little bit higher, some a little bit lower. So we feel that this encompasses allowing, different housing choices and different price points. It also targets high density. There's a small portion of the property on the southeast corner that was an RTA stop, and it's our understanding that the RTA may be interested in reutilizing that portion again if there was enough density in the area. Finally, we also feel that this helps pull development from Ohio City down into Clark Fulton, where a bunch of new development is happening in that area. And finally, I know Councilman McCormick has sent an email to Director Collier and Secretary Bozak expressing his full support of the project. The property was acquired by private sale. It's zoned as local retail business. We meet all the requirements of the townhouse code, and we are not required to obtain a townhouse use designation per 337.031. At this point, I'd like to hand it off to Hannah. She'll discuss more of the details of the site plan as well as more detail on the project.
Thanks, Mike. Maurice, could we go to the next slide, please? This is just another aerial of our site highlighted there in yellow. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. These are just some context photos so you can see the architecture of the single-family homes near the site. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Michael, is Michael Bozak on? And Maurice, this is not our correct presentation file.
Maurice, there were two files, one for the practice planning meeting on Tuesday, and then a second one that Pega sent yesterday. Did you get that one?
I did not get an update yesterday, no.
We apologize, Hannah. We had the second presentation made up, but for some reason it didn't get into Maurice's hands.
Okay.
So Hannah, with this presentation, can you still present and tell us what's changed from this one?
Yeah, I can just describe it for you. It's not anything too different from this, so I apologize. I'm just trying to pick out the differences on this site plan. So back to the project, as Michael said, we're zoned local retail business. We are complying with the townhouse code. We don't anticipate any variances on the project. We originally presented you with 57 units, 57 townhome units. We've reduced that to 56. We have eliminated a unit for some of the comments we received at design review, where we did receive schematic approval.
Excuse me, Hannah, do you have the presentation that you can pull up? We can share your screen so you can use that one.
I do. I can definitely do that.
Hold on a second. Let me give you the ability to do that.
All right, is everyone seeing my screen now?
We're seeing you, but not the presentation.
Oh, okay. Apologize.
There we go. It's coming. What's coming?
Are you seeing the PDF now or still just my screen?
Just you.
I apologize. Doesn't.
There we go.
Okay, great. Thank you. Apologize for that. This is just our zoning diagram. I'm going to move forward to the site plan. So this is our revised site plan, which has some changes we've made in response to comments we received at the Near West Design Review schematic meeting we had. As I was mentioning before, we've lost a unit in order to create a larger pedestrian connection here, sort of in the central area of the site. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but we've widened out some green space between the units to really emphasize the walking capabilities of the site and allow for more green space. We've also slightly changed the aggregation of the units on Fulton Road, the units fronting Fulton. We used to have two buildings. We've combined the units into one building, which we think gives it a stronger street presence and establishes a clearer urban edge on Fulton. Some other changes we've made due to further site investigation on our side is on the southern side of the property, we have changed the aggregation of units, and we've also made some of them a bit smaller. We have a steep slope drop off across the southern portion of the site, so that's why we've shrunk those units a little bit. We really focused on the pedestrian experience of the site in our conversations with design review. On West 37th Street entry, we have stepped the unit back to open up the pedestrian entry into the site and make it a little bit more gracious coming from 37th to the interior of the site. At all entries to the site, we plan a contemporary metal archway with signage, so it will clearly indicate the entrances to the site and invite people in. The central portion of our site is a large shared courtyard, which has 11 units fronting on it, and that is a public amenity. I will let Garrett show you some of the site furnishings and some of the designs for that later in the presentation. This slide is in response to our previous planning commission meeting. There were some comments about turning the units in different directions to try to open up the site a bit. We did investigate this, and I wanted to share it just to show that we've taken your comments seriously and thoughtfully. We also shared this with design review, and we, as well as the design review board, didn't feel that this was as successful of a site orientation. In addition, that kind of big red line running across the site is where the slope drops off. So now that we have some further information from our civil engineers, we really understand that the site wouldn't work with this kind of a unit configuration. But I did want to show that we have considered it and studied it. This is a perspective rendering of the project, and I'm going to let Garrett from Sixmo step in to talk about the architecture a bit.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good to go. Okay. So for the architecture, as far as the architecture is concerned, we really tried to tour the surrounding neighborhoods quite a bit, and we walked through there, looked at a lot of roof lines and a lot of materiality and that sort of thing. For the materials, we stuck with they're not super high-end materials, but they're also not super low-end materials. We have a lot of vinyl siding that's pulled from the neighborhoods. We have a lot of thin brick. We have a lot of AZEK trim accents and that sort of thing. For those that have porches, we have some metal accents for the porches and the porch roofs. Trying to kind of keep things contemporary, but still blend it in with the surrounding neighborhood. We also looked at kind of the variety of outdoor spaces, both that we can provide and what's also existing in the neighborhood. So every unit has at least some sort of outdoor space, whether it's a front porch along, predominantly along Bailey and Fulton there, or on the internal ones where we fit stoops. A lot of times those have roof decks to walk out onto. For those that are limited in terms of roof decks or front porches, we kind of aligned those with the center courtyards so that those have kind of a nice big kind of open yard in front of it, and they get kind of the view of those green spaces on the site. The materials are pretty standard, I think. Shingle roofs, vinyl siding, like I said. We've got thin brick, we've got metal railings and stained wood front doors. The composite decking there by TimberTech, we've used that in the past, and that's been very successful. Let's see, in terms of wayfinding, We have a lot of wayfinding, and like Hannah mentioned, we've got the kind of contemporary metal trellises that'll go over the entryway. You can kind of see that in the upper right-hand corner there. We'll have lighting bollards, and yeah, there you go. So we have one of these kind of stationed at all of the major entrances to the site. So when you're coming in off of 37th and 36th, and I mean, just off the top of my head, I think we've got 2 of them off of 36th, one leading to the south portion of the site, one leading into the major courtyard. That's, you know, the shared space kind of to the northeast. One of the things that we pulled from a lot of the near west comments was the corner conditions of the building. So not just at the corner unit at Bailey and Fulton there, but anywhere where there's really an exposed corner unit, we really tried to treat that as kind of wrapped around materials and that sort of thing, so that it doesn't end up looking like just the sheer side of a building, you know, along I think 36th Street was a really good example of that, and 37th Street there, those 2 corner conditions. We really tried to utilize the green space on the site to try and limit any of those sight lines where you're going to see any of the kind of direct views of the you know, the backs of the garages and that sort of thing. So the 2 kind of major courtyards there that that are shown, kind of one right in the middle on the eastern half of the site, and then one kind of dead south there. Those are both very strategically placed to screen the views from 37th Street down to those to the backs of the garages to the east and the south. I think that's about it architecturally. Yeah, I think that's about it. Hannah, do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Just a quick couple stats about the project that I forgot to mention earlier. It's 56 townhouses, as I said. They're all 3 stories. They all have attached 2-car garages. They all have some kind of living space on the lower level. And as Garrett mentioned, every unit has some private outdoor space, whether we wanted to do a mix of different unit types and styles, so there's some nice variety on the site as this is a larger development.
Thank you, Hannah. Commission members, questions?
Mr. Chairman, we have Lillian Curry with a raised hand and Charles Slife.
Okay, Lillian, go ahead.
So I think that obviously I was the one who had some questions about this layout. I think there was from my perspective, there's a misunderstanding about sort of what I thought needed to be explored, which wasn't rotating the unit layouts. It was the fact that there are no man doors, at least unless it changed on the auto court side. So, so meaning that people visiting this, and I understand you've added some more better connection. The front doors of the units, especially with all the units on the back side of the site, there are no front doors, is basically what I'm saying, as opposed to the project we saw prior to this, which decided to make a more kind of European auto court with a stamped pedestrian, but had unit layouts that recognized the importance of front doors. So that was really my primary concern before, and I know you've been through a lot of reviews, so I'm one person, but I just wonder if you've thought about that a little bit more, about the fact that the design that you've proposed, or that you're proposing for this place, doesn't have front doors.
This is Hannah, if I can address that. So when working with city planning staff and design review, we have discussed the issue of the front doors, the pedestrian circulation versus the vehicular circulation at length. And it's always been our feeling and our understanding from city planning when we meet with them preliminarily that there is a desire to separate the pedestrian circulation from the vehicular circulation. Part of it is a safety standpoint. We want a comfortable pedestrian experience where you're not walking necessarily in the same place as the cars are driving. We do have front doors on the units, all of them. On Fulton and Bailey, they front the street like a traditional house would. We have that are facing interior corridor, and any that aren't on, I'm sorry, an interior courtyard that aren't on the street or the courtyard still have a well-established pedestrian walk. We've taken care to include wayfinding signage, lighting, entryways into the site. We've also, I didn't mention this before, but widened the sidewalk so it's an even more comfortable pedestrian experience. So we are trying to be very sensitive to this issue, and we feel for this project that the orientation of the units that we're showing is the most successful.
And if I could, can I add to that?
Sure, go ahead.
We did go back to design review after this was tabled and directly addressed Ms. Curry's concerns with them, and they felt that it was better to do it as we had laid out with the front doors along the back sides of the units as opposed to integrating the pedestrian traffic with the vehicular traffic on the front side. So it was something we discussed with them. We presented the idea to them, and they still felt that having the entryways on the back end or on the back of the lot was the preferred way to go.
Mr. Chairman, we have a couple other people wishing to comment. We have Mr. Fluker, Mr. Slife, and also Donna, and I don't want to get the last name wrong, Greganis from, I believe, Ohio City.
Okay, well.
And also Director Collier.
Gotcha. So Charles was the next one, I think.
Yeah, and actually, I think Councilman McCormick is on also, if he'd like to say something. I don't know if he's able to raise his hand or if you could unmute him.
He just raised his hand. Go ahead, Councilman.
And I'll go after him.
Okay, great. Councilman?
You do need to unmute yourself, or I can do it for you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? I didn't mean to jump the line there. I'm sorry about that. Good to see everyone on, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this virtual planning commission. So thank you to everyone on planning staff at the city who helped put this together. Good to see everyone. I'm happy that Charles is responsible for this, not me anymore. So from the council side, but he's much better and smarter than I am. So you're in good hands. Just a couple quick thoughts. I really want to thank Knez for really working intimately with the city planning staff. You know, there were adjustments to the site plan, how it flowed, all sorts of things from city planning's perspective, which I thought were enhancements as well. So I want to thank the planning staff for working on that. This is a really exciting project in Ohio City in Ward 3. Fully support this project. It will, take a really underutilized and essentially abandoned area and turn it into a vibrant residential area for the community. So just wanted to add my 2 cents that I support this project. They've really worked hand in hand with the community and with city planning staff, and I appreciate that. So I'm going to be quiet now and pass it off. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Charles?
Yeah, thank you. You had mentioned at the beginning there was and I know it's no easy task, it's very expensive, but putting in a infill rapid station. Have you all talked to RTA about that, or is that just really conceptual? And I ask because at that location, the rapid tracks are kind of sandwiched between 2 separate freight lines. So in order to get someone down to the rapid tracks, you really have to have a station and a bridge over tracks, and finding out the placement of where that station would be could be really tough with the topography. So I'm just wondering if that's something that RTA has commented on or thought through, and at what level?
This is Hannah. We haven't been in contact directly with the RTA. If you look at the south corner of our site, there's a little kind of cutout out of it that is a city-owned lot. That's the location that I think we've talked about with the city as a prospective RTA bus stop. We would love to have a station and some kind of pedestrian connection, and we do understand difficult topography. Our hope is that us bringing this kind of residential density to this area could spur the RTA to take another look at it. And we'd be more than happy to meet with them, and we have discussed it with the city further. That would be, something that we would love to happen on the site or near the site.
Thank you. And just if it might be worth sending this over to them and showing them that little corner and letting them look at the topography and thinking through. And I guess what I'm thinking is if you had to lose one unit or shift something just to preserve that ability, would that be worthwhile and something to come back with us to? So just to make sure that we're not losing the ability because of the topography to turn a $15 million rapid stop into a $40 million rapid stop and kind of kick it out of the running. So just a comment.
Thank you. August?
Yeah, I would just sort of like to echo Lillian's concern. This site feels like an apartment building. It really does. I mean, because I still think that as you have accommodated pedestrian walkways, you're literally there's no defensible space. There's no private domain. There's nothing that says this is my door or not. You're walking literally right in front of someone's unit. But if that's what you believe is going to sell, God bless you, I suppose. But that's just my feeling. Thank you.
Thank you. Maurice, who else put their hand up?
We have Director Collier, and we have Donna Greganis from Ohio City.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, fellow commission members and others. A couple of things I want to make a point about. There's some things that exist here, despite the compact nature of the site, I think have been established pretty well from my perspective. With respect to Fulton Road and also Bailey Avenue, there's an establishment of a very strong edge there. And I think that's a really good thing with respect to Fulton Road in particular. The other piece that I think is very relevant that I've seen some enhancements with respect to this project is these courtyards and these walkways are really heavily defined, I think. So it establishes that sort of front yard type space. So if you look at that middle court there off of West 36, that's pretty strong. The units are actually peering into that court. The other issue that we had talked about previously was guest. So when you look at West 37th, I believe that's like a somewhat of it's a dead end, obviously, but it's somewhat of a street that has a lot of vacancy on it. So my assumption was that people would park along that street if they're visiting and be able to navigate the site pretty well, given the features that have been added to kind of anchor you at certain points and pull you through the site. So I would just say, just from our perspective, given the irregular shape of this area, I think they've done a good job with working with the real estate that's been provided to kind of pull people through the site, establish those edges, and I think it's moved in a pretty good direction from my standpoint, given the site restraints. Thank you.
And we had Donna. Did you have anything?
Go ahead.
Hi, good morning, members and other people. I'm Donna Greganis with Ohio City Incorporated and Tremont West. I'm the Housing Development Manager. I wanted to make sure that it was important to note that this site did take about 15 years to clean up. It was a drastically blighted site, and we're really excited to see this come to life. The developers have followed proper community engagement standards for the area. They hosted a joint block club meeting as this site does fall between two different block club areas. Many of the issues and concerns from the neighbors were addressed at that meeting. But I do think it's important to note, this, it was mentioned, this site has the opportunity to be a transit-oriented development, and there are talks about doing a red line station here. Additionally, neighbors and design review have raised concern about eyes on the street, as there are no doors on the rears of the units, which essentially can create a blank wall. And then another question that was a big concern, the corner unit should interact with both of the corners on either side. I'm not sure if we got a good view of that, because I know the drawings weren't exactly updated. But so those are the comments I wanted to make sure we brought up. But we are in support of this project because it was a very blighted site for many years. But the two main concerns are the blank walls and the corner unit. So thank you.
Thank you.
This is Hannah again. The rendering I just pulled up, I'm hoping you can see, shows that corner unit a little better at Fulton and Bailey. And I did want to touch on Donna's comment about eyes on the street. We did discuss this, and though there aren't front doors overlooking the vehicular access, on the second level, there will be large windows, and that's the main living space of the home. So that's where the most activity is going to be. There will be eyes, they'll just be from above, not on that lower level necessarily where the cars are coming through.
Thank you. Commission members? Any more questions or a motion?
This is Slife.
Yeah, I move approval.
Okay, Charles made a motion. And is that a second then?
Yes, I will second. Thank you.
Okay, motion is second. Further discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Bowen,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Yes.
Curry. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
No.
Paul,
Yes.
Slife.
Yes.
Okay, it passes. Congratulations.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Wade Park Townhomes, new construction, seeking schematic design approval. Who's here for this one?
1 second while I reload the presentation.
Sure thing.
So are we doing Wade Park next?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we have the presentation online.
And who is presenting, please?
Bring back my participant list. Just 1 second, please. I believe we still have Christina Schmitz from Sixmo, I believe.
Yep. Yes, I'm here.
The floor is yours.
Michael from Knez is actually going to introduce the project for us.
Okay, so both of you were already sworn in, so I don't need to swear you in.
Well, I wasn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you shall answer under the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for being honest.
Morning, everybody. Back again. We're here for schematic design approval for Wade Park Townhomes. Knez is very active in this area. This is part of a larger redevelopment we're doing in the area in association with the Ashbury Point townhomes, which have already been received permits. We're doing single-family construction. And we are also the owners of the old Huff Bakery, which we are currently in the conceptual stages of a redesign on that as well. The project is located, if you could go to the next slide, at the corner of Wade Park and Ashbury. It is the old parking lot for the Huff Bakery building. It was always a parking lot, and that is what it has remained since Huff Bakery has closed down. It's currently just in a little bit rougher condition than what it originally was. There's a little bit of overgrowth. It's fronted by the RTA and railroad tracks. To the east, to the south and west, there's residential construction. And to the north, there is the Huff Bakery. Again, similar to the Fulton Row Townhome project, we feel that this meets the city's citywide planning goals, especially once we've developed Huff Bakery and completed our other construction in the area. We feel that it's going to create a very walkable, transit-oriented, area. It's going to provide a variety of housing options for people in the area. I know through some discussions with planning staff, I have heard that there may be consideration of an RTA stop, I believe maybe on the other side of the RTA tracks, which again, with all that density in the area, I would imagine would be very beneficial. We have the support of Councilman Conwell as well as Famicos Foundation on this project. The property is zoned 2-family, so we will need the townhome use, residential attached approval. We meet all the townhome code requirements. We also feel that it meets the requirements in terms of connection to the community, connection to other buildings in the area, and fits in well with what's going on over there. With that in mind, I'll turn it over to Hannah to discuss a little bit more of the details of the actual project.
Thank you. Can we go to the next slide, please, Maurice?
Hopefully they're current this time.
So far looks good. You can see our site there. Again, it's across the street from the old Huff Bakery. We're very excited about to be developing in this area. Next slide, please. These are some context photos so you can see the kind of single-family residential houses that are in the area, as well as the facade of the bakery building. Next slide, please. These are photos of our site. Next slide, please. This is the site plan that we are proposing. We're proposing 37 townhomes. It's a total of 11 buildings. We have been to design review and received schematic approval. Since then, we have made some changes to adjust to comments we received at design review. We've particularly been studying the aggregation of the units, the spacing between them, the to the interior of the site. As Michael mentioned, this is a 2-family zoning. We are complying with the townhouse code and we do not anticipate any variances on the project. We have aggregated the units in a way to break down the scale of the site into something that feels like a more pedestrian scaled block. Towards the west side of the site, we have buildings which are adjacent to the single family housing, and as we move to the eastern portion of the site towards the more commercial area, we're doing a couple larger buildings. Can you go to the next slide, please? This is a sample facade for one of the buildings that is fronting on Wade Park. All of the facades that front on the streets are designed with brick fronts. The idea is to merge the residential character of the area with a bit of the commercial character, so it has a bit of a warehouse feel that we think will play nicely off of the bakery facade nearby. We have different window patternings and different aggregations of the units for different buildings. The units each have a covered stoop. Can we go to the next slide, please? This will be one of the buildings with an interior front. We are transitioning to siding on the interior of the site. We're trying to keep a variety of price points on the site, so we do have a mix of materials that we think will help us offer several different price points and invite a greater variety of customers into the site. Next slide, please. This is the side of the building. Anywhere where you see a side of the building will be wrapped partially in brick before transitioning to siding. We do have a lot of glazing on the buildings and different, again, window patterning to bring visual interest to it. Next slide, please. Maurice, can we go to the next slide, please?
Oh, that was the next slide. It's just,
I apologize. Can you go one more?
Sure.
Thank you. This is the back of the units. They are 3 stories with roof decks, so everyone has private outdoor space, and each unit has a 2-car attached garage. Next slide, please. This is the view from the corner of Wade Park. As you can see, we do have a larger unit and a larger building to anchor to hold the edge there, and do something more prominent that will stand up and mirror the bakery facade a bit. Next slide, please. This is the view of the units down the street. You can see the different window patternings, and you can see how the brick is wrapping the edges of the building. Next slide, please. These would be interior units, so you can see we've transitioned to siding here. The window patterning is a little bit different. We're using arched windows in some of the brick, and then transitioning just to rectangular windows in the siding, which was a suggestion we took from design review. Next slide, please. These are just floor plans. I think we could probably go back to the site plan for the further discussion. The units are from 12 to 1,400 square foot each. If anyone has interest, we could go through the floor plans later.
Is this the slide you would like up?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Commission members?
Mr. Bowen, we have Mr. Collier would like to speak on this.
Okay. Go ahead, Freddie.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I just want to speak broadly to the importance of the project in the context of the investments that the city is making in the Mayor's Neighborhood Transformation Initiative. This area is in a footprint between Lakeview, Superior Avenue, East 105th, and Wade Park. Area is experiencing a large concentration of scattered development as well as mixed-use development. This area for a number of years has been a huge challenge. And we're really excited at the fact that the developer has been taking on properties in this area to support the investments that the city is also making in this geography. One of the things that's important about this project is the fact that it introduces a variety of price point and product in the neighborhood, which is one of the key goals for the transformation efforts in this area. And I just want to go on record by saying that this is a project that we are in full support of, that we want to see happen. And it's an area that obviously is challenged, but we believe with the investment in the Huff Bakery site, these units, and also the scattered site infill homes that are proposed and being built currently is really going to help to stabilize this area and restore value back. So I just want to go on record articulating our support. Thank you.
Thank you. Maurice, anyone else?
Yes, we have Chris Shefton that would like to speak.
All right, Chris.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Shefton. I'm the Director of Real Estate Development for Famicos Foundation. This particular project happens to fall within our service area. I'd just like to echo Director Collier's statement. This is in support of the work that the city and Famicos have been making in this particular stretch of the neighborhood. In the case of us as an organization for the last decade, a lot of the work that we've done in terms of single family rehab development has helped to set the market in comps that Kenez has used for their single family work, and is now going to extend into this townhome project. We're excited for our investment to now be pushed and supported by private developers and reach new parts of the neighborhood to be able to help to stabilize property values in this particular neighborhood. Thanks to the combined efforts of both Kenez and Famicos, we are now starting to see property values increase in this particular geography and folks being able to put their homes on the market for a much higher price point than they would have been able to even do 3 years ago, and pushing wealth creation, which is a central tenet of both the Mayor's Neighborhood Transformation Initiative as well as the My Glenville plan, of which this supports. And so from our perspective, we want to give our kudos to Kenez. We continue to appreciate their partnership and willingness to work with us as a CDC, and their support and being able and willing to listen to residents and their issues and concerns as projects like this come to life. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is Lillian. I just want to say, I think this project is really important, and I actually think it's kind of much better designed architecture than the previous one from the same group. But I still would like to caution against 16 units, I believe I counted, with no front doors. Those front doors that are up against railroad tracks, that are really unsafe space back there, that is, to me, just an example of both in Ohio City and here, a kind of a cookie cutter approach to having one unit type that, I think I'd really like to caution against that, not having front doors and 16 units, where if I'm coming to visit one of those units, unit 28 or 27 or whatever the number is back there, I have to park on Wade Park, walk all the way along the tracks. Even if I cut through, it'll be very hard for people to find these units and to have safety and security. And so I have to say, I think the word I would use is, I think architecturally these are better. They're less suburban feeling than the other ones. But I think city planning needs to really think about this. City planning staff, which is Wesley Harper's, at least acknowledged this and dealt with kind of walkways along and front doors along where the cars are going. And even though it's not ideal, it's more rational and safe. And if we're going to allow this auto court situation over and over again, then we've got to grapple with what we're doing. And so I like the units on Wade Park. I love the corner. It's much better on Lakeview than even the project in Ohio City. But those 16 units, I would say, are unsafe, not urban, and really, in my opinion, dangerous. So that's just how I feel. Like a broken record.
Thank you, Lillian. Anyone else?
We have August Fluker, please.
I concur with Lillian. on the elevations, I'm not really sure. I'm convinced there should be arched windows. And typically I don't delve into the details of elevations. That's just my opinion. I don't, I just don't believe that they add anything to the architecture, in my opinion. That's just my opinion.
Anyone else?
Mr. Willis?
Mr. Collier would like to speak?
Yeah, I do want to acknowledge the commentary made by Commissioner Curry. Particularly if you can go back to the previous slide. Keep going to site plan.
Site plan, yes.
Yes, thank you. All right, so Maurice, if you could put your cursor down at the bottom where the units abut the tracks.
Can you see that?
Yeah, this corridor is in part what I believe Ms. Curry is referencing with concerns that you have the bridge structure here, and then you have this aisleway. How wide is this this space to the developer?
It's 13 feet.
Okay, and then that's literally 13. Is that 13 feet from the property to the bridge, or is that the front yard and sidewalk? What portion?
I would have to ask Christina to answer.
We have from the front facade to our property line, we have 9 feet. And then from the property line to the wall that forms that elevated railroad, it's another couple feet. So probably around 12 feet.
Mm-hmm. So part of and Lillian, you can respond to this with respect to what you meant, because I don't want to misrepresent your comments. With that being such a narrow corridor, the concern for safety, I can see why that may be heightened. On the previous proposal that we looked at with Knez, you're looking at units abutting green space rather than a vertical element like a wall. So you create this kind of cavernous environment back there. So two questions that I would have is, one, how do you treat that in order to mitigate safety concerns? Or has there been any thought given to creative reconfiguration of those rear units and how they can better respect what's going on north of them rather than I think that's west, if I'm not mistaken. West of them rather than east of them, which is a wall.
We have worked with city planning on this, and we went back and forth with Sharonda a bit on this, and we did revise the units so that there is more space there. We shrunk the footprints of those interior facing units already so that they're a little bit smaller on the lower level. We all larger green spaces between the groups of buildings so that and it opens up with other building. We are doing our best to be very sensitive to the pedestrian connections. We always include lighting for security and for just the residents to feel comfortable. One that we didn't mention before is we have also been talking with the councilman, and it's our hope that he's offered to facilitate this, that we will get some kind of mural painted on the side of that bridge by an artist that is local to the neighborhood. So we're looking at this from all angles to try to make that a comfortable and aesthetically appealing space. We do think that 12 feet will be comfortable. We have room for a walk and some landscaping. And again, we really focus on the shared public green spaces between buildings. So there's some variety. It isn't just a long tunnel, as some have mentioned.
Yeah, one other thing that I would suggest with respect to sight lines, if you're walking under the bridge along Lakeview Road, as you're walking along the corridor and you look to your left and you begin to see these units, the first thing that opens up is this, narrow walkway. And then you have it says 20 by 50 unit 21. I'm just wondering if in fact you didn't have that one unit there and that was more of an open area where the site would open up to you as you walk by, so that you can kind of see those clear sight lines rather than just sort of that narrow view shed that you would have. That would be helpful with respect to safety just because of visibility, because you'd have sort of that open area there, and it would, kind of take your eyes down that corridor so that, people can actually feel like there's eyes on them, particularly eyes on them with the units like unit 17, 18, 19, 20. I'm sure there's windows off of the backs of those units. So just as a thought as to sort of how you may be able to draw attention into the space rather than having sort of that narrow walkway as sort of this tight area that you'd have to be concerned about. And I'm just thinking about it too. I understand the whole safety piece. The neighborhood is still transitioning. So I think it would be important, whatever you do here, is to make sure that if you go with this unit count and they're facing, you really have to accessorize your safety features.
Other comments?
I think that I appreciate those comments, and that is something.
I was going to say, this is Lynn. I would be curious how Chris would, from the neighborhood point of view, feels about these rear units. And I ask this because clearly from Kness, we're going to see more and more of this. And I didn't like it in Ohio City. I don't like it here. I think it's bad design not to have front doors, period. I don't care where you are in the world. So to have 16 units here and 16 units there that don't have front doors. But from a neighborhood development point of view, I can't believe Famicos thinks this is a good approach.
So thanks, William, for the question. So in the design review, the Northeast Design Review, when Kness originally came to present this project, these issues were raised, specifically from the neighborhood perspective. And Hannah knows this because every time they come to us with a project, we kind of have the same conversation about the number of units on a site. At that design review at the time, I did mention to them that we would prefer less units on a particular site, though we do understand the challenges from a development standpoint with new construction. You're trying to maximize your dollar. So we understand that, but we would prefer less units on sites like this. So that's one. Two, the corridor specifically to the tracks, as well as addressing the street directly across from Huff Bakery. We also mentioned that as well, that we really feel like there is a need for front doors on the street, and it's something to be done from a facade perspective, even if it was faux, to kind of give it that feel. And then we also mentioned, like I was saying, the stretch along the tracks in terms of if it was possible to widen it, if there could be lighting put specifically along that wall to make it a safer and more comfortable walk, and landscaping treatments and all of that in order for people to feel safe when they're coming to visit. So we also talked about walkways from the street in order, like if you park along that street there, if you're walking towards the back, if those pathways could be lighted, as well as landscaping treatments put there so that they are more attractive and people feel safer walking. So we agree with you, Lillian.
I mean, I think really the answer is, and it's not one that Knez would probably do. I mean, the answer is wider units that have front doors that front on the drive, so that there are eyes on the street and corners on the street, and to have a dedicated walkway or pedestrian path in the auto zone, and to reorient these rear units to the front. I know that means more work for architects because they can't just use the same unit layout and flip it over, but the truth is the only answer here is to do a wider unit with a two-car garage that has a door that fronts. And honestly, that's the best solution. It might mean one less unit, and it means redesigning the unit so you don't have just one unit layout. But that is the only way to do this safely and actually in a way that is the best for the people who will live here.
Mr. Chairman, we have Ms. Paul would like to make a comment, and Mr. Fluker.
Thank you. I just wanted to share, and my voice is kind of consistent with the discussion we had on the last one, the last time it was presented. I share Lillian's concerns. I think that, you know, one thing, I think lighting and some type of security surveillance could definitely help, but I'm concerned with this because it's not just a temporary fix. It's going to be a permanent layout, and I think it breeds an impact and a calling for an unsafe situation. I think that regardless of the neighborhood, and in particularly for a neighborhood that is I think that the fact that it's laid out this way, you know, it's hidden, it's covert, and I think that these types of designs, I'm concerned about a trend that, you know, you pass one through and now we have another one, and it might be appealing based, relatively speaking, to the neighborhood today, but as things evolve, this is going to be something that I think is going to be a problem that we're going to be stuck with, and I just think that as in the last project, we should be able to see a better attempt in addressing that concern of safety the way it's laid out.
Hannah from Knez, may I respond to some of the comments? So I just wanted to go back and try to address a few of the things that have been raised. First off, I'd like to say we're here for schematic approval, so we are willing to tweak the site plan in any way we can to address these concerns. I think Director Collier's comments were very helpful, potentially opening up that corner. We wanted to establish a strong street front on Lakeview, but if that is hindering a safety concern, that's something we're very willing to study. We already have adjusted the connectivity of the street, as Chris mentioned, and reduced our unit count from our initial proposal at design review. We can certainly study trying to get more space on the interior frontage. I do want to be clear, though, that those units do have front doors. They're on an interior frontage, which is defined in the city zoning code. So we are following all the procedures for an interior frontage, which is allowable and is a viable front end unit. We can look at expanding that space so it's a little bit wider and more comfortable. We will absolutely provide security lighting, and the project will be well lit throughout. I do hear the comments about moving the front doors to the vehicular drive lane. We have heard these comments before, and we feel strongly putting a front door next to the garage is creating a front-loaded garage where pedestrian circulation is clashing with vehicular circulation, and we don't feel that that is the strongest design. I think at this point it's a difference of opinion, but it's not for us a matter of the unit count necessarily, is that we do feel like establishing a stronger, more comfortable interior frontage is a better solution than having front doors next to garage doors that open into the drive lane. And And a note on the units, the units in the rear are not, I just wanted to clarify, they're not a mirroring of the units in the front. They are a different size, a different unit type, a different style to adapt to the different conditions. The units in the street side have a different footprint, and we're not doing this for expediency or just to reuse units. We do custom design these for each site. They are site specific.
Could you show the first floor plan of the rear units? Because I thought I saw it enter into an office. Can you show that?
I'm sorry, Lillian, which one?
The first floor plan of the rear unit.
Am I going the right direction? Ah,
Yes.
Is this similar to the front unit?
This is the front unit, actually, I believe. Christina, do you have the rear unit?
No, I don't have the rear unit first floor plan in here. I just have the front units.
Is it the same? Do you enter into an office and then up?
It's a smaller footprint, so it's probably more of like a vestibule.
More like a mudroom.
Yeah, it's not going to have that 9-foot interior living space that is required on the street.
Mr. Chairman, we also have Mr. Fluker would like to comment.
Well, I guess I'm coming early with my social commentary because you guys know me. I think as we move out of this crisis that we're currently experiencing, we need to begin to start thinking about things differently. And what I mean by that is we need to be a little bit more empathetic. What a car court, an auto court means in the suburbs versus what it means in Ohio City versus what it means in Glenville are three entirely different things. And we need to start thinking about people, because I understand the building, I understand the economics, I understand, density. I think we're all for density, but I think we really need to start being more intentional about how we address infill and how we stitch back together neighborhoods. I mean, please know there's over 44,000 vacant units in the city of Cleveland. And so we although there's a lot, there's also chances and opportunities to be better. So I just wanted to add that in. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we also have Councilman Slife would like to make a comment.
Just a very quick comment. If this does move towards relooking at the site plan, with that retaining wall along the railroad, I would just hope that we've looked into whether or not the railroad has any easement rights or anything for maintenance, that the space isn't too narrow. It's old, it's a little worn down, and I'd hate for whatever the project ends up being to end up being torn up because the railroad comes in to try to fix its wall, or that any portion of the development could push water towards it and cause it to collapse more. That's a pretty high retaining wall, a very busy freight railroad, and I just hope that it's being considered in everything. So just a quick comment.
Mr. Chairman, we have Sharonda Watley from the staff would like to give the comments from the Local Design Review Committee.
Good morning, everybody. Hopefully everyone can hear me. As was previously mentioned, we did review this project at the Design Review Committee meeting on March 17th. And so I really wish that we had the original site plan to kind of compare to what you're seeing right now on the screen, just to really visually show that they did take quite a bit of the suggestions from the Design Review Committee. One thing that I will say is that I think that Unit 21 that Director Collier had suggested may actually be a possible solution in terms of opening up that site. One thing that you may also want to think about or consider is possibly treating units like 25 and 31 a little bit differently in terms of having their entrance possibly off of that pedestrian, those smaller pedestrian walkways. So again, it'll give a little bit more intuitive directionality to the site for pedestrians that are coming through Matapata Park on Bay Park Avenue. One thing that the committee definitely focused on during that meeting was the density of the site, as well as the arrangement of the number of units. And so I think that this site plan does begin to address some of that. And then there was also a lot of comments about that rear access in the rear. And so this updated site plan does begin to address a lot of the comments about security and functionality. And so we are supportive of Kenez's efforts, and I do agree that there is still some work to be done.
Thanks, Sharonda. Again, we're looking for schematic site approval right now, and I think those comments are something we definitely will consider, and I believe we'd be able to address many of those concerns moving forward.
Mr. Chairman, we have no other hands raised at this time. You're muted, sir. Still muted.
Okay, here we go. So I don't want to lose a quorum. So what's the commission's pleasure at this point?
All right, well, I'll move the tabling.
And I'll second Diane Downing.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table. Can we table to a date certain, please?
Next planning commission meeting.
Is that okay with you, Diane?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I amend my original motion to include a date certain of the following planning commission meeting this month. Oh, well, next month.
I'll second.
Okay, call the roll, please. Present, yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Slife.
Yes.
Okay, it's tabled to the next planning commission meeting. To expedite this, because we have some other design reviews that staff will be presenting, because we have a number of them that are demolition only, and we could lose a quorum for the ones that city architecture is presenting, and I don't want to do that. So let's go to East Design Review, which is the Cedar redevelopment phase 3, seeking final approval.
Mr. Chair, I need to recuse myself for Cedar and also Chester 75.
Okay, please mute your microphone then for these two. Thank you, August. So this is East 28th Street and Community College Avenue. Who do we have for this one, Maurice?
So this is the Cedar redevelopment.
Yes.
So we have John Wagner from City Architecture.
And is that it?
1 second, please. And I also have a Rachel Lowy. Sorry about the pronunciation of the last name.
Hello. Yeah.
I'm trying to find the the appropriate slide. If you just hold on 1 second.
Okay. Well, I could swear them in while you do that. So if everyone presenting could turn on your cameras and unmute your buttons, I'd like to swear you in.
I don't have a camera, David.
Oh, Rachel, I'll get you a camera for Christmas.
I left it at home.
Oh, you're at home?
No, I'm at work.
Oh, okay. Okay, so will you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you shall answer under the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Yes. Thank you. So we have the PowerPoint up now. Who's going to speak first? Are you going to speak first, Rachel?
I can. I don't want to impede John. This is the third phase of our the Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority's Sankofa Village. Sankofa is the formal name. The partnership owner entity is Cedar Phase 3. As I said, this is the third phase. Phases 1 and 2 have been completed, which John will go into more detail. And this all came about from our Choice Neighborhoods Revitalization Plan for the Central Community that was approved by HUD in 2014.
Thank you, Rachel.
All right, you guys ready for me?
We're ready for you.
All right, so Sankofa Village Phase 3, but before we get into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about all the changes that have happened in the central neighborhood as part of the Choice Plan, as part of what Tri-C has been doing, mainly focused around the intersection of Community College and East 30th Street. Next slide. This is just some excerpts of the Choice Plan that was prepared in 2014 with CMHA, the City of Cleveland, HUD, as well as all of the neighborhood stakeholders, envisioning sort of a redeveloped East 30th and Community College and the entire, obviously, central neighborhood. Next slide, please. Just an aerial photo of the Central Choice neighborhood is the area in the red dotted line. And the focus of this presentation is around the old Cedar Extension or the new Sankofa Village, which is at the right arrow of the yellow line, giving you a distance to downtown Cleveland. Next slide, please. And then a visual sort of transformation of that neighborhood as all of the planning and development projects that were proposed or have gone forward in the entire neighborhood are shown in one giant three-dimensional model. Next slide, please. I think we skipped. Maybe?
That appears to be the next slide.
All right, well, this is different than the presentation I gave at design review. So we'll wing it. This is the old Cedar Extension. And it was demolished back in 2015 as a part of Phase 1 and Phase 2. Next slide, please. Because I don't know what's coming up next. These are just sort of precedent images of what was built during the Phase 1 and Phase 2. These are the townhomes. And I bring these up because we are proposing to build almost identical, similar product for Phase 3, same types of materials, same setbacks, same scale, same landscaping. This is the townhomes along Community College, which are of a larger scale due to the size of the street. And then they step down as you get into the neighborhood with the newly constructed East 28th Street. Next slide, please. This is a view of the mixed use, mixed income 60-unit apartment building that was built at the corner of East 30th and Community College. Next slide, please. All right, so this is an aerial of as it exists today. The area in yellow is what we're proposing to build Phase 3. You can see Phase 1 multifamily building in the corner, as well as the Phase 2 townhomes and the beginning of a linear park just on the east side of East 28th Street. Next slide, please. This is the site master plan showing obviously the existing conditions, the CMHA high rise all the way on the east side of the site, the Phase 1 and Phase 2 townhomes, as well as the proposed Phase 3 townhomes and the extension of the linear park. The future phases, which are on the west side of this property, the mix of product is not yet determined, but it's the hope of the design team as well as owners that we continue the linear park and create a larger park next to the Cleveland Bathhouse Rec Center along Central Avenue. Next slide, please. This is just showing the master plan in a little bit more detail and showing that it was approved back in 2013, phase 1 in January of 15, phase 2 in July of 15. And what we're showing you is a continuation of the same master plan. Next slide. Just some aerials looking southeast from Central Avenue. The phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 built out. Next slide, please. Again, looking northeast, showing the same phases. And that's phase 3 right in the middle with the larger scale townhomes again on Community College, mimicking what we did in the second phase or the first phase of townhomes. Next slide, please. Just another view, same information. You can see the continuation of the linear park. Next slide, please. Some street level perspectives looking south on East 28th. You can see the old stuff or the first phase of townhomes mirrored onto this next side of the street. We're continuing the same scale, porches, architectural design, landscaping. Next slide, please. Looking north. Next slide, please. This is a photograph of the completed phase 2, which is representative of what we will be building in phase 3. Next slide, please. Landscaping and amenities. Each of the areas has, extensive landscaping in the front and the rear, as well as areas for picnic tables and grills. Next slide, please. The extension of the linear park, which will include a playground, as well as bike racks and benches and trash receptacles and landscaping. And next slide, please. This is the beginning of the phase 2 park that was constructed, and the next phase will continue the same type of plant material landscaping and site amenities as well as lighting. Next slide, please. These are some of those amenities. Next slide, please. The lighting is a continuation. I know this gets repetitive, me saying it's a continuation of what we've already done, but we're building directly across the street. So it's a mix of pedestrian scale and street level lighting, as well as porches and building lighting. Next slide, please. These are typical elevations rendered, and then I have some black and white ones showing every facade. They're probably a little bit more boring to look at, but it's a mix of masonry, fiber cement, vinyl siding, vinyl windows, asphalt shingle roofs. We have been able to maintain a good complement of masonry, given the fact that the cost of construction risen in the last 5 years from when this was constructed, which I think is a compliment to the developer, the contractor, and the commitment of CMHA. Next slide, please. Oh, we seem to be missing the community college elevation rendered, which is actually that top building, building 1, where you can see it's very similar to the first phase, a touch longer, but still a very good amount of masonry, 3 stories. The scale, I think, is appropriate for community college. And then the smaller scale buildings as we move along. And I think there's one more slide maybe. And these are just additional images of the balance of the townhome buildings facing the park along Cedar or Central and the rest of East 28th Street.
Thank you, John. The councilwoman's in the meeting. So Councilwoman, would you like to say a few things?
So unmute yourself. You're still muted.
Can you unmute her?
Now she disappeared.
Oh, she's unmuted.
There we go.
Great, I made it. Good, Mr. Chairman, good morning, and good morning to the members of the commission. I wanted to briefly express my full support for this project, Phase 3 of Sankofa Village here in the central community. Finished building out the important intersection of East 30th and Community College, where we have great partners. In addition to CMHA, Tri-C, Cleveland School District, and of course the wonderful residents of the central community. 1 and 2 have been wonderful additions. They're beautiful, well maintained, and basically haven't had any problems, there in the development or in the apartment building. And we all have been anxiously awaiting the continuation, the continuing build out. And so, I look very forward to it. Again, I think it's going to be a wonderful addition. And although we didn't get the central choice funding from HUD, I am, very grateful for CMHA's continued commitment to building out this project, to the city support, and to all of our community partners. So I just wanted to express my full support for Cedar Sankofa Village Phase 3.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Nice to see you.
You too, Dave.
Mr. Bowen, we have Jeff
is looking to say something. Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff. We have Jeff from Burton Belcar.
Good morning, Chairman and committee members. It's good to see you. I just wanted to echo the councilwoman's support on behalf of Burton Belcar, Jeff Segalski, Real Estate Development Director. This is a phenomenal proposal. We wholeheartedly support it. It's a key part of the revitalization of the lower central neighborhood, which has included the additional phases of Sankofa as well as Tri-C and several other projects that are going on. So just wanted to offer my support. This is a really excellent proposal, and I'm looking forward for it to be under construction soon.
Thank you, Jeff. I know Kim wants to say a few things. Go ahead, Kim.
Hi, good morning, Commission member. Yes, this is a project that has been a long time coming. We're really glad to see it to fruition. We're also glad to know that although plans developed may take years in order to implement or to be realized, we're really very pleased that this is creating a very strong, revised neighborhood that's really central to several institutions. So within the campus district, you have Tri-C, you have St. Vincent's Medical Center, Cleveland State University, up to East 55th with the other CMHA estates. So this really represents an investment and I guess a long-term vision for the future of Cleveland residents in the central neighborhood. So very much supportive and happy to see this realized. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, Maurice?
Yes, Mr. Bowen, we have Nicole Calhoun from the City Planning Office would like to also make a quick comment.
Great. Go ahead, Nicole.
Okay, this was very well received through the East Design Review. There was just one suggestion that some form of individuality be placed with the doors to show the separation of units, color, or some form of personal expression for each unit.
Thank you, Nicole. Maurice, anyone else?
I have no other raised hands at this point.
Commission members, what's your pleasure?
Good point.
Move approval, Diane Downing.
Second, Stami Paul.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Bowen,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Curry. I'm sorry, I did not get that. Thank you. Paul,
Yes.
Slight,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I believe Mr. Collier wanted to make a quick statement.
Extremely quick. I just want to say that last comment, as I look at the illustration here, this is a great project, long time coming, and I'm just glad to see it's continuing to move. But John, if you're listening, that last statement, don't take that lightly. Just as you look at the doors, they're all the exact same. And if you notice, you use some varying colors on some of the facade elements. And I think the comment really pertains to looking at some variation with the door color to give it sort of that, the point of the committee, that individuality. So I think that's a really small thing that you can look at and maybe offer some variation with color. So you can see the greenish facade that you have around the windows on the one unit, and then you have like the blue. And that level of variety, I think, makes it even that much better. So I just want to go on record, saying, take a look at that. That's not a bad comment at all.
Thanks, Fred. Okay, let's move on to the next one, which is Chester 75 multifamily new construction seeking schematic design approval. And this is at 1914 East 75th Street. John, you were sworn in, so you're back up.
Okay. Chris Shefton, do you want to start? You may need to get sworn in.
I need to get sworn in.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you shall answer under the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you.
So good morning, everybody. Thank you, commissioners and planning staff, for this opportunity to be able to present this exciting project to you. Chester 75 is a first for Famicos Foundation in that it is a multi-unit, fully market rate building that we're doing. And so this is an exciting opportunity for us to be completing. So this project, which is located at the corner of 75th and Chester, as you can see in the slide, is a former Kingdom Hall building that was purchased last year. And so having early conversations with city planning, one of the things that we knew was really important was the opportunity to provide density back into the context of this neighborhood. We're really looking at Chester 75 as an opportunity to introduce millennials, specifically the millennial market, to the Huff neighborhood for the opportunity to live and fall in love and hopefully buy a home in the future. While this is a market rate building, we are working very hard to ensure that the price point for this particular property will start at the lower end of market rate pricing. And so we really consider this to be almost workforce without subsidy, really looking to expand the market and the opportunity for folks to live close to the amenities that are being developed in both Huff, very close University Circle, and very close downtown Cleveland. we have done several community meetings regarding this project. And we've also had lots of conversation with Kenez Homes, which is currently planning projects at the northwest corner, as well as I believe it's either the southwest or southeast corner. So our thought process is that in our conversations with planning staff early on, this is an opportunity for us to introduce new housing types, or I should say bring back housing types, because this site before the Kingdom Hall was built was actually a multifamily building. So it allows for people to be able to have multiple housing types on these four corners. So Kenez is planning on building townhomes, which is very attractive to the residents. And we've also asked them to look at and consider potentially building some single family houses along Home Court. Again, stepping down the housing types and diversifying what's available in this particular neighborhood. That's it. Thank you so much, and I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me again. So as Chris mentioned, this is a multifamily building built at the corner of Chester Avenue and East 75th Street. You can see the site highlighted in orange right there. Next slide, please.
Hopefully there won't be any surprise slides this time.
Well, we'll find out. These are some historic maps showing the site highlighted again in that orange dotted line, you know, sort of progressing through history. And we thought it was important to show this because as you move from the late, 1881, where that site was essentially a grassy field, to being further developed in 1927. And then you get to see the slice that Chester Avenue, when it was put in, cuts through the Huff neighborhood and sort of creates a very wide chasm. And then the site as it is today. It's important to note because as Chester was put in, a lot of side yards became front yards. And over time, people have started to reestablish Chester as a front door, as a gateway into not only Midtown neighborhood, but also the Huff neighborhood. And you'll see from the site plan that we are trying to do the same thing by anchoring the corner. Next slide, please. These are some historic photos showing the development of Chester. And if I could point, I would, but you can see how it sort of split the neighborhood in half and, created that sort of chasm, down the middle of the neighborhood. Next slide, please. The zoning of this property is currently zoned multifamily. It currently has an institutional use with the former Kingdom Hall. Just a few little notes in terms of height. Apparently you can build 90 feet high here. We are not planning on building that tall. But in most instances, we comply with almost all of the zoning. We may need, we'll need a variance on parking, and we may need some variances on setbacks, but it is currently in the city for zoning only review at this time. Next slide, please. So here's the site again. It's just under an acre. You can see that the property lines where there are large setbacks along East 75th and Chester Avenue, we are going to hopefully take advantage of those large setbacks to create buffers from residential units that are on the ground floor, as well as opportunity for some activated ground floor use in terms of fitness centers and conference rooms and residential amenities, as well as a live-work unit along East 75th Street. Next slide, please. Just some existing photos of the Kingdom Hall along Chester Avenue and East 75th. I think we can go through these pretty quickly. Next slide, please.
Yeah, John, go as fast as you can because we're going to lose a commission member.
Okay. Site plan. It is a L-shaped building. The building is actually a little bit longer than you see on the site plan because we're trying to maximize the amount of parking spaces by tucking in a few 4 spaces under the building so that we have as close to a 1-to-1 parking space count, 50 spaces to 56 units, because during our community meetings, the parking was raised as an issue, and we have worked really hard to mitigate that issue, given that we feel that based on historic precedents and the way the market is moving these days, that a 1-to-1 parking scheme is not necessary. Next slide, please. This is the landscape plan. We are heavily landscaping around the base of the building, adding street trees where they are needed, as well as landscape screening and fencing from the neighbors. In addition, we are going to work to save and maintain the mature trees along East 75th and Chester Avenue. Next slide. The next slide shows some images of the proposed landscaping. It is, sort of a hardy mix of native and adaptive plants, good color all season long. Next slide, please. The floor plans of the building. So the blue area on the first floor is all residential amenity and service, including indoor bike storage and package deliveries with refrigerators, because people get groceries delivered these days, as well as a place to take care of your pet with sinks for like a pet care station, conference and visitors or conference rooms and tech meeting rooms, as well as fitness studios and a fitness center. And then the balance of the floor is a mix of units. I would like to point out that we are proposing to do an interesting unit mix along Chester Avenue because it is such a busy street. We're looking at doing a 2-story townhome there where you have the living spaces on the ground floor and then the quieter private spaces of the bedrooms up on the second floor. The building is made up of a mix of studios, 1-bedrooms and 2-bedrooms, along with those townhome units as well. Next slide, please. The second floor and the third floor are identical other than the townhome units. And then on the 4th floor, on the northern end of the building, we are stepping the building down as we get into the smaller scale neighborhood and creating a great amenity for the residents, including an indoor lounge that will open up to a large roof deck with some covering, with hopefully great views of the city. And you'll see that as we get to the renderings. Next slide. These are the unit types. We can skip through these. There's another, next slide, please. Townhomes, unit plans, next slide. And then these are the elevations. And I'm going to go through these. We'll just skip through these fairly quickly because there are some renderings at the end, which I think are far more interesting and easier to understand. So if we go to the page that has the materials on, I think it's 2 ahead. We're using a mix of masonry, metal panel, a wood grained metal panel that'll be done in a horizontal and vertical, depending on where it is on the building, and then fiberglass windows. And then there's a small section of ornamental fencing that's located at the edge of the parking lot on 75th Street. Next slide, please. So here are a series of renderings showing the building. We've tried to break down the mass of the building, not only stepping it down into the neighborhood, but also break down the scale of where the materials transition, not going full 4 stories with the brick, but stepping it down so that it feels more in scale with some of the homes that are around there, but also complements the scale of Chester, and I think it's appropriate in terms of its size. I'll point out that we have an entrance that is accessible from East 75th as well as Chester Avenue right there on the corner, with an open trellis feature that we think will be a great gathering space. But there is also additional entrance from the rear for the residents should they park in the back. Next slide, please. And then these are just a series of renderings looking northwest at the intersection of East 75th and Chester, down at the street level. Next slide, please. The rear of the building is predominantly made up of metal panel, as well as that same tongue and groove wood look metal siding. We've reduced the masonry down here, but to the ground level, but we've done that in part to save some money, but we haven't switched to, a completely foreign material to the rest of the building in order to sort of maintain the same level of architecture, detail, and richness all the way around the building. On the left there, you can see the tuck under parking, as well as the rooftop terrace, which I believe there's a view. The next slide, please, that shows an aerial view of the rooftop terrace with views of downtown. The sort of heavy landscaping along 75th, and then the parking and the screening, the fencing, the board-on-board screening from the neighbors' homes. Next slide, please.
Mr. Chair, I really only have a few minutes. I'm sorry. So I'd hate for us to go through all this without getting to a vote if possible.
Okay, so let's do
How
that.
about I'm done?
We have a good idea, and I don't want to lose a quorum so we can vote. So commission members, comments or a motion? I think it was pretty complete. Nicely done, by the way.
Thank you.
Diane Downing, I'll move approval.
I'll second Lillian and say that it really like the design a lot.
Yeah,
Me too.
pretty nice.
Call the roll, please.
Bowen,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Slife.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Hey, John?
Yes.
You're on the phone?
Yeah.
Hey, one thing you might want to think about, the sales you have on the outside terrace, you can actually have a sale maker make those. And they make it out of a material and they kind of understand wind loads and everything like that. And you can leave them up. I have one in my backyard and I had a sale maker make it.
Fantastic idea. Thank you.
And if you need a contact for one, let me know. I'll let you know.
Just send it my way, please.
All right. All right, let's move on to so Maurice, if I look at design review before we go into demolition, the downtown flats one was removed, correct?
I believe you're correct.
All right, so now we're into demolition and there's quite a few of these.
Yes, it'll just take me a few minutes to get back to the appropriate slides. And I believe we have someone, yes, from the city. He's already spoken up, Woo Jun.
Hi, everyone.
How are you?
Good.
Nice thing I don't have to swear you in because you're on staff. And
That's correct.
there we
Thank
go.
you, sir.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you guys as well.
You're going to get a real quick rewind view of everything.
So Stami, you're in your office, correct?
No, I'm not.
This is your house?
Yes.
Wow, I like the wall. I think am I the only one in their office? And Maurice is, I think.
No, I'm not in the office. I'm in my basement.
Oh. I'm the Lone Ranger out in my office. Talk about social distancing.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I believe we're ready to begin.
Okay, so the first one is a proposed demolition of a 2.5-story residential structure seeking final approval. And this is at 12813 St. Clair Avenue.
Yes, if you, if we could just go through some of the pictures real quick, Maurice, and then just let the committee members see the condition.
There you go.
So that's just the, site location and site context. Next slide, those are the exterior. And next slide, please. Next slide. Those are some of the surrounding properties. Next slide. Across the street. And these are some of the interior pictures. So if you can just slowly move through them so that the committee can see them.
It looks like someone was mining for copper.
Again, once it's demolished, we'll go ahead and seed it, straw it, and that'll be it.
Okay, so what I would look for is an approval according to the ordinance, codified ordinance 341-08. So we look at these images and, if the building can't be saved, if it isn't necessary for the context of the neighborhood and must come down. So I would take an approval.
Move approval, Diane Downing.
Second.
The second was Lillian Curry. Call the roll, please.
Bowen,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry, Paul,
Yes.
Slife,
I think Charles had to leave, so he's absent now. But we still have a quorum, so that carries. Proposed demolition of a 2.5-story mixed-use building, seeking final approval. This also, all these demolitions are in accordance with codified ordinance 341-08. So this is at 2916 East 116th Street.
Yes, this is the demolition at 2916 East 116th Street. This is just the site location and site context. Next slide, please. These are some of the exterior pictures. This one actually has become even worse where it's strictly compromised. So if you can go to the next slide. There's some, again, exterior. Next slide. Surrounding areas. Next slide. Across the street, church. Next slide. These are the interior pictures. If you can just go slowly through them, Mr. Maurice, and then.
That looks like you shouldn't have been in there to take that picture. I looked like I was falling down. All right.
Move approval, Diane Downing.
Second.
Okay, we had a second from Lillian Curry. Call the roll, please.
Bowen,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Okay, we move on to proposed demolition of a 1-story institutional building seeking final approval. This is at 4130 East 131.
Yes, next is the demolition, again, like you said, of 4130 East 131st Street. And again, these are just some of the context and site location. This is a church. So if you can that's the outer pictures. Next slide. Surrounding areas. Next slide. Next slide. If you could just slowly go through those.
Wow, a garden.
I think the roof is compromised.
What roof?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, unbelievable.
Approval, Diane Downing.
Second.
Okay, we have a second from August. Call the roll, please.
Bowen,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry, Paul,
Yes.
Motion carries. This is a proposed demolition of a two-story mixed-use building seeking final approval. This is at 11801 Kinsman Road.
All right, so 11801 Kinsman is right along the major street, Kinsman Road. These are some of the site location and site context. Next slide is going to show you some of the exterior. Exterior doesn't look terrible, but as we move to the interior pictures, you'll see that it's not been kept up. There's no investments in that area at this time.
Move approval, Diane Downing.
Second, August.
Motion second. Call the roll, please.
Bowen,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry, Paul,
Yes.
Passes. Thank you. Proposed demolition for a 2.5-story mixed-use building seeking final approval. This is at 12608 Miles.
All right, so these are the site locations for the 12608 Miles. Next slide, please. This is some of the exterior pictures, and the surrounding areas, the interiors. About it on that one.
Move approval, Diane Downing.
Second, August.
Motion and second. Call the roll, please.
Bowen,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry, Paul,
Yes.
Passes. Thank you. Proposed demolition of a 2-story mixed-use building seeking final approval. This is at 13722 Kinsman Road.
All right, so this is, look like we have a lot on Kinsman today. This is right across the street from the county building. Next slide, please. These are some of the exterior photos. The surrounding areas and the interior pictures. Seems like all the pictures are almost the same, huh?
You have different plastic bottles in each one of them, though. Oh, there's a leather couch.
Maybe that's salvageable, right?
Yeah.
Tires.
Move approval, Diane Downing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Call the roll, please.
Bowen,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes, I would say it's unfortunate. It's kind of a handsome building, but I understand.
and Paul.
I'm saying that with a sigh. Mine's a yes with a sigh.
Well, Lillian, you're on fire today. Don't stop there.
And Paul.
Yes.
Motion carries. Proposed demolition of a 2-story mixed-use building. This one's at 14202 Kinsman.
Again, this is on the major street, Kinsman. These are some of the exterior photos.
Sorry, went too fast.
That's fine. You can go to the next one. These are the surrounding areas. These are some of the interior pictures.
I move to approve demolition as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Bowen,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry, Paul,
Yes.
Well, we are at the end of the agenda, and I would just like to say to staff, wonderful job. Thanks for getting this all prepared. Lillian made a comment on the chat that there's quite a few people watching. We should take a look at, even when we start doing this in person, making this available more to the general public where they can watch it on their live stream on their TV.
Do we have one more demo? I have one more in the show.
Oh, you do? What is it?
The Union one, 10612, I believe, Union.
Yeah, it's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda.
This will go quick.
Oh, I have the old agenda. I got the other one now. This is a proposed demolition of a 2.5-story, 2-family residential structure. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, it's at 10612 Union Avenue.
All right, so these are some of the exterior pictures. I don't have that many interior photos, but you know, those are the surrounding areas. I think these are the there you go. That's it.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion second. Call the roll, please.
Bowen,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
I should look at the screen. It says adjournment right on there.
All right, thank you, everyone. It went very smooth.
So, yeah, I'd just like to thank staff again, Maurice and Freddie and Michael. Excellent job. Thanks for setting this up.
Chairman, I do
very
recommend
well
that
done.
you seek a motion to adjourn in a second, and then we just call the roll one more time. That's what.
To adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Call the roll, please.
Bowen,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry.
Yes, I also vote for Maurice to get a producer's license. He's like producing a show.
Yeah, it's excellent.
You guys really nailed the raise hand feature. Excellent. Nice job.
It's smoother than I thought.
And Paul.
Well, you guys were awesome. Thank you very much.
Even got my social commentary and I'm happy as I can be.
You just got to keep it going, guys.
Away, Maurice can mute you and turn your camera off.
That's right.
Director, do you have any reports?
Yes, this report is a little bit sobering, but I do need to share this with you. The 2020 census is still underway, has been extended into October. A blessing for us in many ways. Due to the COVID situation, the extension was granted. This allows us time to continue to get our numbers up. They're going up, but they're moving slowly. And just let me give you the numbers right now where things stand. We have a 45% response rate right now in the city of Cleveland, which is on the low side. The county has a 60% response rate. The state is at 64% and the nation is at about 58%. So obviously, there's still a lot of work to do to get those numbers up. We all know what the census means for the city of Cleveland. You're talking about $1,800 per person lost when people do not fill out their forms. You can fill it out by mail. You can fill it out by phone. You can also fill it out on your PC. So there's absolutely no excuse why people shouldn't be filling out their forms. We have a robust program that we've been running, lots of radio ads. There's going to be a lot more activity going on throughout the summer. The mayor is very serious about this. So we're going to be doing some activities in the summer, and we have a litany of partners who are going to be continuing to work with us on this, the school district, et cetera. Our door-to-door campaign was halted due to COVID. We were scheduled to go door-to-door back in March, and the federal government's enumerators have not gone out. They will not be going out until after May. So we're staying tuned for that. And for those of you who are not familiar with the enumerators, those are the people who come knocking at your door if you have not filled out the form. So obviously, in a city like ours where you have hard to count populations, the enumerators matter, the door-to-door matters, and having to keep drilling the census message is extremely important.
We lost Fred for a minute.
It looks like he lost the signal.
Uh-oh. Now I was going to ask him how we can help.
Give him a minute, he may come back. I would also like to thank TV20 for streaming this planning commission, our first online planning commission. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate it.
Oh, there he is. You're muted. Oh, there you go.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, so how you can help, sharing the link to the census form via text or in your social media posts. If you got social media networks, please share the link we will send you at my2020census.gov. We'll take you right to the form to fill it out. It only takes a few minutes. So I'll send that out to you guys. Share it with your social media network, share it with your friends, family, because this is really important for the city and the region and the nation, as a matter of fact. Lillian, you're muted.
Oh, sorry, I was talking to a child in my house.
Mason? Is that Mason?
No, it was my daughter.
Okay. So Mason, my butt kicking.
Yeah.
For that kickball. That was embarrassing. They embarrassed us.
This year. This year.
All right, guys, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much.
Take care.
All right, everyone, thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.